Jai Bhairava Baba. If you are on the path of Bhairava Baba, you will break everything you know about spirituality right at the root. Most seekers come to spirituality because life hurts, because the world feels heavy, because desires feel dangerous, and their suffering feels personal. And somewhere along the way, a silent conclusion is formed inside. Freedom must be somewhere else. It must be in another place, another state, or another world. Abhinavagupta, one of the greatest Kashmir Shaivism masters, says something so radical that even today it shakes advanced Tantra practitioners. Bondage is not caused by the world. Bondage is caused by Sankocha, or contraction of your own awareness. This is not poetry. This is actually metaphysics. In Tantra Loka, Abhinavagupta explains again and again that nothing in existence is impure, fallen, or outside of Shiva. The universe is not an accident, it is not a mistake, it is not something to be corrected. It is Shiva's own self-expression, unfolding through Shakti. So if everything that exists is arising from Bhairava Baba himself, then tell me honestly, what exactly are you trying to escape? And this is where Bhairava Upasana becomes dangerous to the false seeker and liberating to the sincere one. Because Bhairava Baba's path will offer you truth without any compromise. Other paths often teach liberation by distance. Distance from your senses, distance from your emotions, distance from the body, and distance from this world, and even distance from your identity itself. Bhairava Baba does not teach distance, he teaches recognition. Abhinavagupta uses a word that changes everything, Pratyabhijña, recognition of what was never lost. You were never bound by the world, you were bound by forgetting who was experiencing it. This is why Tantra does not begin by condemning your desires, emotions, or experience. It begins by asking a far more uncomfortable question. Who is the one to whom this desire is appearing? If awareness is small, your desire will enslave you. But if your awareness is vast, desire dissolves into vibration. In the Spandakarika by Abhinavagupta, the entire universe is described as a pulsation, not matter moving blindly, but consciousness vibrating joyfully within itself. This means your thoughts, your sensations, your pleasures, your fears are not obstacles. They are movements of the same divine pulse. Bondage happens only when awareness collapses into a narrow point and says, "This is happening to me." Freedom happens when awareness expands and realizes, "This is happening within me." This is why Bhairava Upasana does not ask you to shut down life. It asks you to stand as the space in which life unfolds. Abhinavagupta makes this shockingly clear. Shiva is not trapped in the world. Shiva chooses limitation. The finite self is not a fallen being. It is infinity playing a dangerous and beautiful game of forgetting itself. So the goal is not to destroy the game. The goal is to remember who is playing. When this remembrance stabilizes, something extraordinary happens. You do not become cold. You do not become withdrawn. You do not disappear into a cave inside your own mind. You become so present that nothing can bind you. You walk through pleasure without clinging. You move through pain without resistance. You act without gaining more karmas, not because you are avoiding life, but because life no longer confuses you about who you truly are. This is what Abhinavagupta calls liberation, not escape. The liberated being does not vanish into silence. They remain fully alive, fully embodied, fully responsive, but inwardly unshaken. They do not need to dominate the world because the world no longer dominates them. This is kingship without violence, power without ego, and freedom without withdrawal. Many seekers secretly believe the body is a problem. Tantra heals this wound completely. In Bhairava Upasana, the body is not an obstacle to awakening. It is the altar. Breath, sensation, sound, stillness, these are not preliminary tools, they are direct doorways. This is why the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra gives meditations that seem almost too simple. watching the breath, listening to sound, resting in the gap between your thoughts, feeling sensations without naming it. That is because Bhairava Baba is not actually hiding in complexity. He is hiding in plain sight. The mind wants to escape because it is tired. Bhairava Baba offers recognition because that is only the true reality. And this is where Tantra is often misunderstood. Bhairava Upasana does not make you attached to the world, it makes attachment impossible. Why? Because attachment requires ignorance. It requires the belief that something outside you can complete you. When awareness stands alone, enjoyment remains, but clinging disappears. Experience flows, but ownership dissolves. You still taste the sweetness of life deeply, intensely, beautifully, but nothing sticks. You don't cling to anything. This is why Abhinavagupta says the universe itself is a scripture. Every experience is revelation. Every moment is Bhairava Baba speaking to himself. The awakened one does not read books to escape reality. They read reality and understand all books. And this is the final reversal that Bhairava Baba offers, the one that truly shatters old spiritual conditioning. You were not meant to be free of the world. You were meant to be free as the world, free as moment, free as stillness, free as sound, and free as silence. When this is seen, spirituality is no longer about becoming something else. It becomes about relaxing into what has always been true. It is Bhairava Baba reminding himself through you. You do not have to escape life. You do not have to fight desire. You do not have to silence the world. You only have to recognize who is experiencing it. Everything else falls away on its own.